Hello from the dung heap, everybody. These are my friends. A lot of them.
Friends.
There he is. Hi, sweetie.
Hello. Good morning, everybody.
And we're live. Hello. SPTV. Hello. Hi.
Good morning, folks.
Well, actually, it's 12:01.
It is. So we're almost on time, man. What went wrong that we're on time?
It's the next day in Australia, so you never know. Say morning, good afternoon. Yeah. Hi, everybody. So here we are. I have my better half today. My more calm half. I can almost promise you he won't cry.
I'll try to avoid it. It's embarrassing, you know.
Hi, everybody. Thank
Hello.
you.
Glad to see some folks popping
Yeah,
in.
people are coming in.
Yeah, well, this
They
should
wanna-
be fun and interesting.
Yeah, they want to hear what you have to say. So, hi, here we are. So, one of the reasons why, besides the fact that I know you all love to have Dunk here, he's been up at the A-frame and doing work. He's grounded for a couple days because he's tired.
I was so exhausted. I was becoming a hazard to everybody in the area. So
No, we're just worried about you. We want you to have some rest. No offense, honey, but you're not, you're not 30 anymore.
I'm trying to pretend though.
Yeah, so here we are. I asked him to come on and talk about one aspect of something that he's been studying, and he believes in it more than I do. I'm not ready to embrace really any new set of beliefs, but it's very fascinating to delve into this near-death experience kind of realm. And some of it, like Doug says, there's a whole community, kind of like this community of NDEers, I guess. And there's different schools of thought. There's some people that are a little bit out there. So Dunk's, I think you're pretty reasonable with it. You don't really.
I'm trying to be.
You're not.
I actually feel fairly more grounded and stabilized by what I've studied than I was before, because there's millions of religions out there, and I could never reconcile the idea there's all these religions that claim to be exclusively right. How can they all be right? Obviously they can't be all right and all exclusive, and there's plenty of cults. And so my take on it all is that hearing first person testimonies of things that many hundreds, actually thousands of people over the years have experienced, their takeaway to me is I would have to say it's taken the place of religion per se for me. This is realistic, actual experiences people have had and are still having and talking about. So it's very cool, and it's helped me.
Yeah. So one thing that we were going to focus on is the life review, and if you want to give us some, well, I'll just tell you why I asked you to do it, because many of us we've talked about, and don't want to get in a big discussion about it, but after the 7 videos that Mike Rinder produced last week, it was heartbreaking for a lot of people, because if we were hoping to hear anything from him, it would be a little bit of reconciliation and maybe some self-reflection, maybe some making peace with people. And I guess he did make peace with some people, but it was more like them coming to him to apologize. So we did some discussions on things like leaving a legacy, about when you're nearing the end of your life, how you look back and you make right some wrongs and make peace with people, right? And something that you've been telling me about was this life review where people come back to from the edge of death or from being pronounced dead. And 30% of the people that have reported back from the dead, I guess, have talked about this life review, right? Am I right?
Yeah, no, you're right on track. Okay. So Yeah, one way, like this morning, I was trying to like make a quick recap and review and take a few notes so I wouldn't miss anything or wouldn't try to take on too much material. And I was listening to an interview of Dr. Bruce Grayson, who actually worked with Ray Moody. And I couldn't find my original copy of Life After Life, but like Ray Moody, oops.
Okay, go ahead. Keep talking. They can hear. They can see you.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just getting this ready for you.
So anyway, yeah. So this book was the second book that Ray Moody wrote back when I was younger, and probably part of my inspiration for even getting into this was when I was a teenager. I went through some kind of crisis moments, and I started studying up on a lot of self-help books. And I think my mom had copies of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's books and various. She was just kind of an explorer into these things, and the original 1975 book Life After Life by Ray Moody, I read that, and it stuck somewhere in the back of my head. And then a couple of years ago, I began thinking about this stuff more intently and saw on Netflix, and I don't remember the name of it now, but it was a really interesting program. It went into all kinds of occultic things and all kinds of crazy stuff, but it did have a part where a woman testified she had been kayaking, went off of falls and got killed, and went through this big experience. And I was like, holy crap, it vibed with me. It really did. And I started digging in further, and there's a million now YouTube channels dealing with life reviews and near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences. And all of that stuff began to add up to me because so many of these testimonies are the same or very similar. And obviously everybody's different and everybody's having different experiences in their life. And so they're not going to be identical, but a lot of commonalities exist in them. But anyway, I was telling Marilyn a few minutes ago, I was like, the religions, there's so many religions, and yet the idea of all these religions having a lot of merit really wasn't working for me. And yet this brings in so many things that changed my mind completely. So now I'm like more at ease with I don't fear death. In fact, fear became a thing that I realized was the wrong thing to let govern your life in any way. So anyway, I don't want to belabor what I'm saying now, but we did take a little clip out of an interview with Dr. Bruce Grayson that basically describes what the life review is. And he did such a good job with this, better than I could do. We're going to play a little clip here for a couple of minutes. And he really lays out this life review part of it like amazingly. So we'll do that in a minute or two.
Yeah, whenever you want. Are you ready?
Yeah. I'm just seeing. I want to acknowledge people that are watching.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have the mouse if you want, or
I'll let you manage it.
Okay.
But yeah, Marilyn mentioned to me, in a nice way, that my tendency is if I'm doing a video and it's just me and it's not interactive, that I'll try to present way too much material and I get it on a roll, and I don't want to make that mistake. Yeah. So I want to, I thank everybody that's in with us this morning. This is going to be fun, and I definitely welcome your feedback. So rather than trying to cover too much material or talk constantly, I'm going to try to shut up more and entertain feedback and questions, because it's a fascinating subject. And I know some of you out there are really interested. Some have had experiences and have things to share. So I really want to dig into that. So welcome, Vanessa Winbury.
Yeah, we put up, these are the started ones that Giorgio in the back is putting up so far. Start. Vanessa Winbury, take your time, Duncan. I don't need the A-frame ready until next fall. She wants to be one of the first to book it next fall.
Yeah, well, it's crazy right now. I've been very fortunate. It's November, 22nd now? And I've been racing the clock to try and get this thing closed in. We're very close.
Today's the first day it snowed at all.
Oh, yeah. So winter, there's been a huge change in the weather over the last couple of days. It rained about 2 inches over the last day and a half, I think. Rained all night. It was windy. It was crazy. And we had just gotten the roof 95, or more like 99% closed in. And that's good. And I got about 90% of the wall framing done. So in other words, we're getting it closed in. It's very close. So we're not quite there, but we're close. So I'm glad to have gotten this far before the weather turned on us.
Absolutely. Lori Plays is in the house. Hey, Lori.
Cool.
Sorry she missed last night's because I always go on late. I explained to everybody why I do that. When I do the late night ones is because we kind of have a tradition. I haven't seen him much. And when I do see him, it's usually dinner time. I'm making dinner. He's either taking a shower or a bath. The dogs want attention. So I'm
Yeah.
not really available until about 10 p.m. when he passes out.
Yep.
Sometimes 9, and then I
Yeah,
thought it gives
yeah.
people a chance to, watch all the heavy hitters are usually on around that time on SPTV,
Hmm.
So that's why I was on so late.
Huh.
Hey, Kathy Ann, morning. Have you seen I Survived Beyond and Back? It's got some great NDE stories.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen that. I probably haven't, but I will make a note of that and watch it because it sounds cool. Yeah, there's a bunch of channels that I've watched, and some of them are more credible than others. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, but there's a lot that are really credible. So I've kind of subscribed to those ones, and it really you can get out there because one subject branches over to another. So I try to stay with the kind of normalish ones.
All right, we got a friend, CO Belf, Keyboard Division, Goldenrod Army. That's a funny title. LRH possibly was correct about reincarnation, Soul Trap. Wrong about the washing the windows with vinegar in old newspapers.
yeah, he's kind of outdated.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Marilyn didn't want me to go off track, so I won't go into reincarnation or anything, but I would say this: LRH borrowed or stole from a lot of different sources to come up with his hodgepodge of materials. So it's hard to, if you bring in enough material, some of it's going to be right. So there's things that he used and borrowed that are consistent with what I consider to be the truth, but most of it, he just abused it and obviously just wanted the credibility that certain other things would bring in to slide his poison in along with it. So, obviously he wasn't entirely wrong, but mostly.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking about this morning how, that's how a lot of people end up in cults or even in just, benign like religions, is because I think we're all searching for answers. And if a guru comes up and says, I have the answer, and it seems legit, it seems reasonable, then you start to follow, and then all of a sudden you're in a trap,
Yep.
like CO Bill says. So yeah, I think there's always like some truth in it, and then you kind of get led astray. So I don't know what the truth is. I'm kind of like I said, I'm more skeptical about these things than Dunk is. He's a lot more open, but I love the idea of reflecting on your life and seeing it from someone else's point of view, So you want me to play that clip?
Yeah, go ahead and play the clip, because
Okay.
this is a great introduction to the subject if you're not super familiar with it, and the guy makes a lot of really good points.
Okay. Let me add to stage and just let me know if you can hear it, guys. Make sure the volume's up. Okay.
Again, you've been studying these near-death experiences now for decades. And I think you've said that some 20 to 25% of the cases that you have studied, people experience a life review. What is that in your own words? And is that number about right?
Actually, it's a little higher than that now. It's probably around 30%. And these are people who have basically their lives flash before them as they are approaching death or sometimes pronounced dead. And they describe it in different ways. I can talk a little more about why they use different ways to describe it. But they all basically say that they review every incident of their life in minute detail. And we have descriptions. You mentioned Sir Francis Beaufort back in the 1800s. There were other cases going back to the Middle Ages where people say, I experienced it in great detail, not the way I'm telling you now in outline, but every little detail. Now, one of my subjects, Tom Sawyer, described going back to childhood and mowing the lawn on a hot day, and he said, in my life review, I could count the number of mosquitoes buzzing around me. I could have done it then, but then it was so clear, I knew. One of the most surprising things about this life review is that in about, almost 80% of those who have a life review, they re-experience events not only through their own eyes, but also through the eyes of other people involved in the situation. And I can give you an example of that also from Tom Sawyer, in fact. Mm-hmm. He had his near-death experience when he was in his 30s, and he was working underneath a truck, and it fell, and it crushed his chest. and he had this near-death experience. And among many other things, he had a very elaborate life review. And one incident he remembered was when he was a teenager, driving his truck down the street, and a drunk man wandered out in front of him, jammed on his brakes to stop, and then rolled his window down and started yelling at the man. And the man, being intoxicated, reached his hand inside the window and slapped Tom across the face. And that was too much for this hot-headed teenager. So he got out of the truck and started beating the man up. They left him a bloody pulp on the median strip and then drove off. When he had his life review, he said he remembered it all through his own eyes, feeling the adrenaline rush and the rage, and also at the same time through the eyes of the drunk man, feeling the humiliation of being beaten up by this young punk, and feeling his nose getting bloody and his teeth going through his lower lip. And Tom said to me later, that really convinced him that we're not separate individuals. We're all interconnected, and that when you hurt someone else, you're hurting yourself as well. And I hear this again and again from near-death experiencers that when they experience things through other people's eyes that they had done, they suddenly understand that we're all part of the same thing.
There's the one mind right there.
Exactly.
So when these people go through the life review, is there any judgment?
Okay.
We can stop there because that's sort of the
That's your
main.
next point. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good thing to bring up a little later.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, I thought that was an awesome little story because it totally illustrates the idea that we're connected, and that, like, I think of various quotes like "do unto others as you would have them do unto you." Well, what you do unto others, you're doing to yourself. You just don't realize it. And I think Jesus said a lot of things that nobody had a context to really understand what he said. Like, I even think of where he says, love your neighbor as yourself. And then I would add to that, because your neighbor is yourself. You just don't realize that. Like, we are all connected. That's a huge thing, is like, and I feel like it's changed my attitude in a lot of ways. That's just knowing this whole idea that we're all connected, and then what you do to others is going to come back on you. So in other words, it makes you want to treat other people well, and I feel sorry for, like, I think of some people that have done horrible things to other people, like say Putin or someone. Their life review will consist of them experience everything they've done to other people. And there's your hell. You don't need a
Kim
God to
Jong-
throw you in
yeah.
hell. Yeah, Kim Jong-un and
Yeah.
Idi Amin, all these guys. It's like anybody that's made a life of mistreating and abusing other people, quotes or cults, Scientology, etc. Like, if you've done wrong to other people, you are going to reap that. So you create your own heaven or hell. Most of these people testify to that. So if you're doing good and acting in love, then that's the future you're creating for yourself. That's what's going to come back. So that's a very cool thing.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that's something that you can even think about now is, how your actions affect other people and also affect you, And I mean, I think we're both empathic.
Empath.
Yeah. Empaths.
Yeah. And that's good. People that don't have any empathy, I don't really know why that would be, but we're all at different points in our evolution personally, and being able to feel what other people are doing. I think the whole idea of connection, that's another big theme, like in the whole NDE thing, is the fact that we're connected. And a lot of people have come back and told elaborate stories about how they go over there and they see past relatives, their pets, and that
Pets.
So I feel like, our lost critters and even these little guys, they're going to go on. And it's like very cool. People go to the other side and come back and they say that, there's a lot of I'm not going to go into it. I want to, but I want to hold back. But just the idea that we get to see past relatives and see people that are all still there, and we're all connected. And on the other side, there's no time. Everything is in, like, eternity is in a single second. Like, the people that experience these experiences, say they're on a hospital bed and they've died and they've had an out-of-body experience or whatever, and their life review, they will go through what seemed like it took weeks or months. I'll come back and literally seconds or minutes have passed, and they got jump-started with the paddles or something. They weren't meant to be taken. They were meant to come back and share the message of what they experienced. So time is, like, linear time is sort of a construct that exists because we live in a material world, but it doesn't actually exist on the other side. So that's trippy.
That's wild. I don't know, read
Yeah,
some of
let's see.
these. Yeah, let's just check in. Got a lot of good comments here. Okay, I think we got. Let's go back here. We got from Asen. Hey there. Comment: when my dad was about to go, he started to talk to his brother, telling him, I am over with you very soon. It seems like he saw him next to his bed. Yeah.
Very cool.
Remember the night when your mom passed, about a few hours before, there was a train or something we could hear in the background.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, I'm coming. Like the train was going to stop for her, you know? And she really, oh, honey, you
Yeah,
okay?
that's cool.
You okay, honey? Yeah.
Yeah, that's poignant, I guess they say.
Yeah.
But I was thinking too, as there was when my dad was laying on his deathbed, and this was back in 2008.
I told them the story the
Oh,
other
did
day.
you
But
tell
go
him
ahead.
that story?
Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
it's
That's
so
one of my
cool.
favorite ones. Go ahead.
Yeah, so he's laying there and he was getting really, really close to the end. And at one point he looks over and there's a few of us, I don't remember who was there exactly, but we were sitting there next to his bed. And he said, well, I'm about to take my toys and go home. And I looked at him and I realized that was one of those moments where maybe he could share something with me because he was on the way over to the other side. So I said, Dad, what are your toys? And he says, my memories, my relationships. And I forget what was the third thing. At the time there were three things, and afterward I had a trouble
Said
pulling
something
them.
about loved ones, but I can't remember.
Like his
Yeah.
his relationships with people, his memories, and experiences or whatever. But I was like, that stuck with me. I just like, wow, he knows what he's going to take with him, and it's nothing material, obviously, but it was cool. He was totally at peace, like no fear in him at all, no anxiety. He had, basically fought cancer for 10 years and had been given a 10-year sentence and decided just to live his life as best as he could and not do chemo and not do radiation or any of that stuff. He's just, he knew that would just be a nightmare and ruin the last few years that he had. So he just lived. And I always tell people this story is like, my birthday is on January 31st. While he was down in the wire, and my brother Al and I and him went up to Jiminy Peak, and we were skiing all the black diamonds and everything. And this was literally a couple months before he passed away, because it was my birthday. We were out on the mountain skiing, and he was gone by March 4th, is it? Or April 4th?
Yeah,
My
it
brain
was.
is failing me.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a few days after Easter. He
Yeah. I
he
think it was
actually
April
turned
4th.
80 on Easter that year, so we could probably figure out
Yeah.
the date, but it was early April.
Yeah, it was only
Yeah.
a couple months. He went from
Yeah.
skiing down the Black Diamonds to being gone. But I mean, he gave it everything he had. And he used to say he'd take walks up the road. And we had the neighborhood that I grew up in, actually, they still lived at until they didn't. And he would go up and down the road. He'd bicycle, but he'd walk up and down the road. But he said he would go up that road, walking up into the woods or whatever. And he said he would go until he knew that if he took one more step, he wouldn't make it back. And then he'd turn around. So it was like he got everything he could out of his life right till the end. And then when it was over, he just sort of was willing to let go. Like he was completely at peace. He didn't fight it. So yeah, set a good example.
Yeah, he was an example of someone who just knew who he was. And he died gracefully. He wasn't afraid. Yeah, very much at peace. We got Maria from Greece. Died 3 times from pneumonia. I saw Hera's death in ancient Greek with my eyes, and lived by a miracle, alive by a miracle. I'm not sure. As a Greek song says, why should I be afraid? I'm not. Wow.
That's cool.
3 times. That is wild. That's amazing. Vanessa says, this aligns so much with what I believe now. The RA material, the law of one, opened my eyes to this. Law of one. Can you write that down?
Yeah. Take notes.
Yeah.
Not familiar
And
with
I
that.
thought Kathy Ann sent me the link to that that show she was talking about.
Yeah.
That
Awesome.
video. The law of one. And he will delve into all this stuff. Trust me.
Yeah. No,
Definitely.
well, I was thinking, like, I've thought about it a lot, and I put up some videos earlier on my channel, and I didn't really have any subscribers, and I didn't get too many views on them. But I'm like, a lot of water's gone under the bridge since I've done those. So I think I'm going to put out a few more not too long from now of more of my current view of things. But I mean, I'm finding this so inspiring, and it's just giving me a lot of peace to, realize there's nothing to fear,
Yeah, I'm actually streaming to your channel right now too.
Oh, cool.
So this
Cool.
will be on your channel.
Excellent.
And so if you like to talk about near-death experiences, if you like dogs, music, building A-frames, or
A-frames
looking
and
at
other things.
construction videos,
Outdoor photography and hiking
photography,
and events like that.
that's right,
Yeah.
hiking, skiing, all the things, then subscribe to @FreeAsAnEagle, all one word. So that's your little commercial.
Yep. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, George. He put the link to
Oh, cool. Cool.
that.
Yeah.
love
No, I
one.
appreciate input because anything
Yeah.
I haven't seen,
Yeah, I know.
I
He
wanna
gets
check
excited
out.
when people are into this. So, all right, I need to do a quick Xena Marling because my throat's really dry.
So, that was good tea.
So, sayings.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Were you born in a barn?
Right.
Because I said so. I'm just resting my eyes. He says that to the kid.
Yeah.
Like, Dad, you're falling asleep. It's on the other side of that. Okay.
Yep.
All right. We got CEO Bill. So are these song lyrics? Some things you do for money, some things you do for fun, but the things you do for love are going to come back to you one by one.
Sounds like it. I'm not familiar with the song if it is, but
I don't know. Or maybe
it's
you
cool.
just maybe you just made
It's just
up a
poetic,
poem right there.
Yeah.
I love that. That's
Hmm.
great. Linda Scott says, as a teen, I was caught in a very rough surf and had difficulty breathing. I saw myself taking my first steps, then having holiday dinner with family.
Ooh,
Wow, then other parts of my life.
that's trippy.
Weird. So you're like, yeah, that saying of your life flashes before your eyes,
Hmm.
maybe that's where that came from originally,
Yeah. Hmm.
And this is my friend Sin from Simply Good.
Oh,
Her
yeah.
new channel is Oh Hell No.
Okay.
Very spicy. Duncan, I have been watching videos that talk about this, and one of the things that are always floating above and seeing what's going on is they are
Yeah.
leaving. Do you think this is true?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, further on this video, maybe it was earlier, but I'll just describe it. And because I've
I'll put this in the description of the video after. Remind me.
Yeah,
so that
so
people
there's
can
been
watch
a
the
lot
whole
of
thing.
people in the past that would argue against the whole idea of out-of-body experiences and everything. Say, oh, it can't happen. Your soul or mind or whatever is a product of your body. Da, 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 da. And people would say, oh no, when your brain is breaking down, it produces all these things. Well, there's a couple of good arguments against this. One of which is the clarity and vividness and photographic memory associated with these events doesn't happen. People are hypoxic and their brains are breaking down. That's one argument. The other I find even more thrilling and convincing is that there's one description in here, but I've heard dozens of them, is people will be in a hospital bed, they'll be passed out, they'll be in a dark room covered up or whatever, they're basically dead. They've been either pronounced dead or the people are trying to resuscitate them. And what'll happen is all of a sudden they're looking down from the ceiling and saying, and sometimes people won't even know it's their body. Like they'll be in a car wreck or something and they'll see this body all destroyed and they'll be looking at it like, oh man, that poor son of a bitch, holy crap. And then all of a sudden it dawns on them that it's them. But people that have had these out-of-body experiences in a hospital will leave their body and be looking down, watching all the people working on them and doing CPR, doing one thing or another. And later they can recount in specific detail exactly what was going on, who was doing what. And then in one of the ones I was listening to this morning, somebody was basically telling the doctor what had happened. And the doctor was like, well, how could you know that? Or were you, trying to figure out how they could know that?
Mm-hmm.
And then the person said, oh no, it wasn't. It was in another part of the hospital, in another room that they saw the doctor. They said something or they did something, and this person could recall in specific detail exactly what had happened in a place their body wasn't at. But I mean, there's enough of those cases to totally convince me that, yeah, people have the OBE or out-of-body experience. They leave the body and and there's stories of people traveling vast distances and, seeing other people and everything during that time. So yeah, your body, like I believe your soul and spirit are they're independent in your body. You're here temporarily in a body, but your body isn't you. It's a temporary vessel that you're in for a time,
This really caught my eye. Yes, Raw. Do you remember? Okay, let me just go down a rabbit hole for a second.
Hmm.
So when we were at our cult, Door of Hope, there was a woman. So Marlene, our cult leader, is the only name that I name from the cult. She used to like to name demons after different gods and different things from the Bible and stuff. And there was one woman who really, really nice, sweet woman that came into Door of Hope. She ended up marrying Marlene's son, one of her son, and she was really, really into tanning. Like she would lay out in the sun. I think she went to tanning booths. She would tan to where her skin, when she was only like late 30s, was like leather. And she had an exorcism. Do you remember this?
Oh, I vaguely do.
And
now,
the
looking
demon
back.
that they sorry, don't mean to laugh. The demon that they exorcised out of her was Ra, the sun god. You remember that? And then all of a sudden she didn't tan anymore. She didn't feel the need to go out in the sun anymore. She still walked a lot. She likes to walk, but yeah, I guess she started wearing sunscreen. Who knows? But yes. That's right. Oh, that was a demon in our cult. Crazy. Crazy. I'm going to skip over Mike Jesus because that'll segue into the next clip you wanted me to play.
Oh, sure.
What they said. Okay. Oh, okay. What do you think of this? What do you think of mediums who read those on the other side?
I have actually listened, because that's one of the things that this whole study branched into is mediums. And I'll say a funny thing here that you can take or leave.
Wait. Speaking of funny things, George said, I was a medium about 20 years ago. Now I'm an extra large. Same
That's
for you.
That's a good joke. I like that joke.
I'm even more than an extra large. I was the medium too.
Yeah.
Dad jokes galore here.
I'm a deep wide double fried or whatever it is.
I don't look good naked anymore. I'm a deep wide.
Deep fried double wide version of the man I was before.
Yeah. I ain't seen my feet since 1984. I don't look good naked anymore. There's a little ditty there. Okay.
Maybe we'll have to have Austin do that for you sometime. That's a good little song.
Percent correct on the life review that their judgment. Oh wait, you didn't even answer the medium question. Self-judgment. Will you feel and will feel and experience all the joy and pain you cause? Okay, do you want to do the medium part first?
Yeah, I'll touch on that just because that's current, and then when we get into this other thing, it's a whole other subject.
Okay.
So yeah, so I actually have listened to mediums in their things, the people like channelers, and there's trance mediums that go into a trance and then they'll speak in another voice. Sometimes they'll relate things. And then there's mediums that kind of just get things or channel dead people type of things. And people will channel like guides and, various.
Like in the movie Ghost.
Yeah, sort of things like that. Yeah. And I am sort of like maybe on the fence a little bit, because some people actually try to, there's a million people that prophesy or try to predict the future on YouTube videos. And unless they're 100% correct, then I don't really know what they're getting or where it's coming from. So I'm a little like, I've heard ones that are realistic about basically channeling people that had gone on, and that I believe that can happen. So, but I mean, in a weird way, like I've sought wisdom for a long time because I had a lot of questions from when I was a kid, and I had a mentally ill older brother and saw a lot of bad things happen. And it made me really seek and want to know the truth about things. And honestly, like I couldn't get a grip on things until the last couple of years. I find this study actually brought the answers I was looking for. But I feel like I really want to just understand things directly. So I feel like I pick up wisdom here and there, and I feel like it just comes. Just like sometimes I'll suddenly have something pop in my head and I'll write it down like, holy crap. And then later I'm like, where did that come from? I didn't think of that. It was given to me somehow. So I'll write out things on paper and I'm like, yeah, this is totally vibes with me. This is what I believe, but it wasn't like I even put it together. And I'm like, yeah, I feel better about this than some sort of trance mediumship type thing where I'm still skeptical of foo-foo nunu things, as Marilyn would call them, where it's like really out there. And if I feel like I'm having something shared with me I totally believe that makes sense to me, then I buy in. I'm like, okay, I'll accept that. I'll receive that. I'd rather get it directly from the source. And everybody talks about source or whatever, creator, God, whatever. I feel like God got a bad name because of religion. The reason religion got a bad name, I'm going to go a little out of my boundary here,
Go ahead.
but I feel like one huge takeaway from the whole NDE study to me is the fact that there's basically only two driving forces that drive the world. One of them is love, which is the creative, constructive, forgiving, supportive, beautiful, peaceful, the good side, obviously, where everything wonderful emanates from. And the other side, and you would think, oh, would the other side be hate or something opposite of love? Well, fear is actually considered the paradigm. The other paradigm is fear, and fear is what ultimately drives all the negatives. And I gave more thought to this, and it began to make sense to me. And I sat down one night and I took a notebook and I wrote everything that I felt came from love. And then on the other side, I wrote everything that came from fear. And fear is really the driver of hate, because people hate what they fear. And fear produces distrust. It produces a snitch culture. It's the only reason we have to have passwords, because on the earth things are screwed up. You have a mixture of love and fear. And where religion went off the rails to me is that there's so many people that are unenlightened that don't realize this is true. They did not understand Jesus when he talked about love. They did not know what to make of it because they didn't know it. They didn't understand it. They didn't experience it. And it wasn't driving them. So people that are in fear want to control. And instead of us all being equal and getting along and respecting each other and treating each other as we want to be treated, people that are in fear want to control. So that sets up all these hierarchical structures, causes people to want to control and intimidate others, people to be on the defensive, war, fighting over resources. There's a million manifestations of fear out there. And fear of punishment, like religion uses fear of punishment. I grew up as a Christian, quote unquote. I finally had to do what my dad did. And I used to think, oh, he doesn't get it. He doesn't believe the gospel. I realized something. I no longer believe that there's a creative God that created me, but I was born already sentenced to eternity in hell.
Yeah.
And that I had to believe a certain set of teachings in order to escape from that. It never sat right with me. And all the times, I was reverent. I'd go into a beautiful old church with stained glass windows and everything, magnificent building, a lot of good people in there. And I would feel the reverence and this awe. And I feel like, I was having some reverence and awe for what I wasn't sure about. I'd been mistaught. Like the loving, creative, forgiving God is worthy of all that kind of stuff, but he's not a demanding tyrant. And I felt like, how could a creative, loving God destroy his own creation and already have them destined to be destroyed unless they adopted a certain, to me, fear-based Christianity is a cult. Fear-based religion of any kind is a cult. And because we're on a planet,
Preach.
So things get totally crazy, So I believe that the truth is, you go to these people have gone to the other side, say it's all love, and the next topic, that this is a good segue into the next topic, is judgment. People come back and say there's no judgment, and I'm like, holy shit! So all this time we've bought into the idea that we're going to be judged and thrown in hell, and even if you try as hard as you want to, the odds of actually making it into, say, heaven is very limited. And yet you create your own heaven or hell. And people talk about manifestation and stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute. If you live in love and treat people well, you're creating your own future. You're talking about karma. Like if you're good to other people, you're being good to yourself. We're all connected. If you're, killing people or beating people up or, bent on these like Putin or any of these guys in the past that did terrible things, they're creating their own hell. You don't need a God to throw that on you.
So we're talking about hate and hateful, actions come ultimately from fear. So some examples. Okay. So that I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like sadistic trolls.
There you go.
Or people that are trying to knock other people down to look better or to be the top dog or whatever, this competition thing, the dick swinger thing. How does that come from fear? Is it because they're afraid of being left behind, or like somebody who is trying to, tear somebody down in order to get ahead and like maybe jealous of money or prestige or whatever. Like how does that tie in to the fear and the hate thing?
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I've thought this through, not completely. I can't totally answer the question, but I can stab at it. Is I feel like people that are in fear almost buy into the zero-sum game mentality, where it's like there's only so many resources, there's only so much attention, time, money, whatever. So if you have something, that's something I don't have. If you're ahead of me in the game, I'm behind, and I'm afraid I don't want to be left behind. I don't want to, the FOMO thing. It's like, I think fear is people fear they're going to miss out on something. So there's a tendency to be like competition. Like I always feel like, yeah, people that are like, it's what I mean, I hate to use the word Christian. I feel like there's a legitimate definition of that where people are actually guided by love. So they want to do good. They don't need to create these power structures. Like I was thinking the other day about the whole power distance thing. Like I think a lot of these hierarchies to maintain order and control, people use methods of putting themselves above other people. Yeah. So if you're higher up in a hierarchy and you intimidate other people, you're bigger, stronger, faster, tougher. It's all based on fear that other people are going to overtake you. So in order to counter that, you've got to be the guy that's stronger, a faster trigger guy, whatever. So I think there's a lot of that competition is just driven by its survivalism. But ultimately, I believe that if we didn't waste most of the resources on this earth, there's plenty for everybody. And people that amass things, I think there's a lot of people that amass terrific amounts of money out of fear of, like my dad said, he was always afraid of losing his job when he was younger. So he's very conservative and saved a lot of his money for retirement. And when he passed away, he left my mom really well off and it's even benefiting us. It's like he worked harder because he was afraid that he'd lose his job, but he never did. And they treated him well. And he retired from GE years ago and they treated him very well. That was back in the days on those ethics, and they didn't try to take away everything from you.
Right.
So,
yeah, really.
But
so, no, it was a good answer. Thank you. Because I've been thinking about that a lot. It's like, what motivates people? Why, excuse me, why use your last dying breath on tearing somebody else down? It just seems pathetic. So gross. And, I feel like, well, gross isn't the right word, but I just want to read Mike Jesus's comment because I thought it was so good. Okay. Duncan is 100% correct on the life review, and that is their judgment.
Yeah.
Self-judgment. You will feel and experience all the joy and pain you caused. And honestly, maybe that is something that can give other people maybe some solace, maybe some closure, because I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, like Miriam, the things that she went through, the hell that she went through, and knowing that certain people most likely may have, I don't know, but she's convinced that there were cover-ups, of her child SA. Maybe this can give people like her or any of us a little bit of comfort, knowing that that person will eventually feel your pain.
Yeah. I find great comfort in that.
Yeah.
Because the idea that people didn't know, like I think a lot of us act in ignorance. If we don't know, like I feel like enlightenment is basically a process of learning how things really work. And all this stuff is how things really work. And when you realize, like for me, it gives you a comfort in knowing like, wow, I used to feel like, in fact, it made me terribly angry. I remember when the whole Ukraine thing got started. When I was younger, there's a lot of bad things happen, but I wasn't so aware of it that it really bothered me. But somehow when that thing happened with Putin attacking Ukraine, and after all the other damage he had done to other countries, it just enraged me because I felt like, here we are, we fight for freedom. We believe in freedom from oppression. And I've always been like a freedom guy. I'm all about freedom. I hate oppression. I hate bullies. I hate people that try to dominate other people and oppress them and all that. So it's been a theme in my life for some reason. And to think of people that had their own culture and their own country and they had freedom, and now you've got this asshole dictator trying to take it away, it enraged me. I just thought, how can this be? How can one guy be in a position to have that much power?
This guy, he was watching the news. I'm like, hey, no more news.
Well, it was stressing me out. It was making me anxious. It was making me angry. And I was like, holy crap, you know, it really, really bothered me. And then having studied into all this stuff, I'm like, I think God allowed me to stumble on this stuff so that I could get out from under the stress and strain of it all. It was terrible.
Read that.
Oh man, you're in some trouble. Bummer, dude. You are lied to. I'm
I
sorry.
fucking love Teal Gulp.
Yeah, there's another cult for you, man.
That's
Yeah.
right. Oh, yikes.
I don't know, bud.
Yeah. And this was about the medium comment. George Massey needs to time himself out for that one. Yeah. That was an extra large.
That's great. Yeah.
Mm. Vanessa said, Duncan, it sounds like you were tapping into universal consciousness. I can't even say it. I can't even say it, let alone do it.
Yeah. No, I honestly, I mean, it sounds like a
Camera love it.
brag, but it's really not. I feel like actually, because I've studied into this material and I'm open to it, I tap into that because people will say they suddenly know way more than they should have. Or, I mean, a lot of these people will testify to suddenly knowing someone thoroughly, like their whole life story that they've never met. Just seeing them walking down the road. And I'm like, that's really trippy. But I feel like some of the revelations, some of what I believe is simply based on what I've, all of a sudden there it was in my head. And sometimes, like I'll wake up in the middle of the night sometimes or in a dream or something, I'll have something. And by the time I would get a pen and paper in hand, it would be gone or I couldn't remember. I'm like, oh, damn, man, I lost that. So if I get a revelation of some kind that I think is important, I try to get it down as fast as I can so I won't forget it. But people that have had these near-death experiences, it's so vividly stamped on their minds, they don't forget. And I think that actually is like it's a case of it being stamped on their spirit, not their brain. Like I feel like I'm getting older and I never had a good memory. And when I was a kid, we had mercury and lead and all the good stuff. And who knows what types of radiation. You know, like I joke with my brother because neither of us, like I can build something like a house because for me, I can process things. If I'm doing something that's a process like building, I can string my thoughts together in such a way that I can figure out problems and solve them and build things. But just rote recall, I have so much trouble. Like I meet 10 people, I walk away. Unless I write the names down within the next 10 minutes, they're gone. Unless there's something particularly arresting about them. So I fight.
He writes things on napkins, paper towels, paper plates.
Yeah, I use tricks to get around the fact
Remember
that
when
I don't have a good memory.
When he was working an hour and a half away when the kids were little, and he'd have to leave really, really early in the morning. Sometimes I'd be still sleeping. And for the longest time, I remember I saved a bunch of them. Little napkins and stuff. He'd set up my coffee and he would, sometimes you still do that.
Yeah,
it's just write little napkins. Now it's more junk mail. We get so many credit card offers. It's not funny. It's like I get a credit card offer on one side and I get a little love note on the other side. Can I read some of these? And then I really want to play that other clip about the judgment, non-judgment thing. Okay, this is beautiful. This gives me the chills. Susan P. I stayed with my dad in the hospital at night. The night before he passed, he asked me if I saw her. I asked who. He pointed to the corner of the room. He said, "My mom. She's waiting for me." That's so sweet. Like I hope that's true.
I believe it. That's a common thing. That's a common element. You know, seeing things people that no one else can see.
I wasn't planning on crying today. Now you got him going, Susan P. I don't even have any tissues in here. I'm gonna put him on a list. You okay?
Yeah, it's trippy, man. But it's good. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Sorry. Deb. Hey, Deb. My dad had one in 1964. Heart attack, hovered above the body, made a deal with his God to become a minister if he let him live. Yeah. Wow.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. I'm going to read Asen. This is a two-parter, I think. I like the depiction of death in The Sandman. Death is a gentle and calming entity who accompanies the souls with empathy to their next phase. Watched it about 6 months after my dad's passing. I cried like a baby while watching. At the same time, it gave me a comforting feeling. Yeah. It's amazing how, like, I've seen people be almost prepared for it. Like, when I did a course, and we talked about this about a week ago when I was doing remember when I had those courses for doing home health care, and we had some end of life courses and things, and it was talking about how like the different phases that people go through in life, and then as you get older and you start to reflect on your life and you start to come to face your mortality, right? And then like if you're dying, like I've witnessed this so many times where somebody like on hospice or whatever will kind of come in and out of consciousness. And I remember like I thought my adopted dad, when he passed away, right before he passed away, I think the day before, maybe 12 hours before, we thought he would never speak again or be conscious again. And at one point he must have had his eyes partially open because my son Austin came in the room, and my dad had been unresponsive for at least a day. And Austin came in the room. He was probably, it's 14 years ago. So he was maybe 8 years old. And Austin came in the room to say goodbye to Poppy. They called him Poppy. And all of a sudden, my dad's eyes popped open, and he looked at Austin and he said, "Hi." And then the entire room, I don't know if you were there that time, we all jumped. We all jumped, and we were like, and I looked at Austin, and Austin smiled, and a poor kid. I mean, he was probably freaked out too, but it was like he was kind of half there and half not. Wow, but there was a peace. There was like a peaceful way about him, whereas like that's the last I heard him say is hi to my son. So yeah, it was just beautiful, and it was like he was kind of here but not, and crazy. Withdrawn, but then yeah, it's just neat. Wild. Okay, let's see. I wrote that one. George Massey. I've witnessed bullies in the workplace and was initially intimidated by them until I saw that they were terrified, insecure people beneath the facade. Yeah. And, we've seen these trolls that, once I was just like, that's it. Rah! All of a sudden they're like, oh, my privacy. I need my privacy. So like they're practically raping our souls, our souls. I don't care if this gets demonetized, and going after our children and all that. And it's like, and then it's like, oh, you say their name and it's like Rumpelstiltskin, it's like, fuck you guys. You're this little scaredy cats and cowards. And I don't even care. To me, they're dead to me. I'm not even going to, say their name because they don't even deserve to have this to even, cross my lips. So yeah, they're going to get theirs when their life
they're
review,
building up some bad
yeah, exactly. Realize, that gives me some comfort,
Yeah.
So thank you for saying that. You're absolutely right. And there's a time to just stand up to bullies, and then there's a time to just ignore them and let them just eat themselves alive. That's what Rumpelstiltskin did. When you found out his name, the princess found out his name, and instead of getting her firstborn, he when she said Rumpelstiltskin, he literally like had such a fit that he like tore himself to pieces and then threw himself off a precipice and went into the black hole. So there you go. Black hole for you. You get a black hole. Get a black hole. All the trolls get a black hole. Yep. I love how troll rhymes with mole, scroll, and hole.
Yep.
Yeah. Lori plays. There is nowhere in the Bible where it says the chances of making it to heaven are difficult. Quite the opposite. It says rich man. A rich man is like what? It's like having a camel go through the eye of a needle.
Yeah.
In the Bible where it says the chances of making it to heaven are difficult. Yeah.
I mean, what was I going to say to that?
It says there's nowhere in the Bible where it says making it to heaven is difficult. Well, actually, it's like it says narrow is the road that leads to heaven, and wide is the road to destruction.
Yeah, so there are things in
taught.
there. But here's a thing that people don't realize too. Like we've all been sold the idea the Bible is somehow the Word of God, and you can't question it, and it's totally complete, and da 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 da. And I've heard some very good, fairly detailed kind of explanations or exposés. I mean, we, because we live thousands of years down the road, don't realize that the Bible is basically a collection of manuscripts and scrolls and things that were found all over the Middle East or whatever, that were the wisdom of whoever had written these things down. People had given accounts of Jesus' ministry and everything. So all these things were collected, gathered together, gone over by a bunch of mortal humans, guys, people that were involved in their church at the time, that decided to sort through them and decide what ones they felt represented God or whatever. How do we know that these people were not under the control of somebody? Wasn't it Constantine or whatever that guided and directed this construction of the Bible, this assemblage of all these scripts, the interpretations?
Oh, my pearls. I don't have pearls.
Yeah. Well, I
Beads.
mean,
My pearls.
a lot of people that have come back from the other side say that, you know, a lot of it was really perverted and corrupted, and it wasn't true to who Jesus really was. And they had control. They assembled these things together. They filtered through them. They eliminated what they didn't like. They collected together what they did like. We don't even know if there were forgeries involved at any point. I consider it completely open to having been corrupted. And a lot of people have come back from the other side and say, yeah, it's wrong. They like, again, going back to that whole fear versus love thing, like the whole love chapter of 1 Corinthians 13 or whatever was a description by Paul of what love really is. If you read that thoroughly, you will realize that most of the things listed there are not practiced by the church, and that the whole fear and intimidation, even Jesus said, don't call anyone master or teacher. There's only one, and you are all brothers. So what do we have in certain churches? And I won't name names. I don't want to offend anybody, but hierarchical structures, top down, people wearing fancy robes, people creating rituals. Like, to me, people think that they're somehow going to enter heaven because they perform rituals or say certain prayers repeatedly. Garbage. It's absolute bullshit. And the idea that you think you can buy off God with money or with performance of rituals or memorizing scriptures or saying long prayers. Jesus said these are all things the Pharisees did. They were hypocrites. They did all this stuff. They're the ones that crucified him. And if you read the things that were specific,
the religious people,
they're the ones that crucified him. It
Right.
wasn't street people. It wasn't criminals. He forgave sinners. He went out there and hung out with, he forgave prostitutes. He caught people like the woman caught in the act of adultery. And then he turns around to all the guys that pick up their rocks, because in those days, it's how justice was executed. You picked up rocks and just whipped them at the person until they were dead. And now he looks around and he looks
That's
at all
rough.
these people that were about to kill this woman. And he says, let you who is without sin cast the first stone. So they look
Hi,
at each
pizza.
other.
pizza guy's here.
Yep, good.
Sorry.
So anyway, they all one by one dropped their stones and walked away, because they knew inside they were not perfect either. They weren't qualified to judge. So the idea of God judging, no, he forgave. He didn't judge. He didn't throw people in hell. He didn't threaten them with hell and damnation. This is stuff that people that want to control you, that are governed by fear, do to you. They use fear to control you. Well, the Bible says perfect love casts out all fear. So if somebody's using fear, it's not love. It's not God. And I've taken this far enough to, at this point, I made a pact with myself months ago. I said, you know what? I am done letting fear control me anymore. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm not afraid. I'm not going to be judged. So I'm going to, like, even crazy things like the A-Frame project, in a way it symbolizes, I've just dropped the fear. I'm going to take something on that I want to do, and I'm not afraid. Fuck it. I'll die when it's my time. But I'm just going to do some things that I never would have been, I would have been scared to do. And now I feel like I'm much happier and freer than I ever was, because I'm not letting fear govern. Like, I'll make choices. And I feel like freedom, real true freedom, is something that love extends.
Eat meat and not fish. Jesus ain't mad.
Yeah.
Jesus ain't mad.
Nope. Well, there's no judgment. So here's the thing. If love keeps no record of wrongs, guess who keeps records of wrongs? Look at Scientology. If love keeps no record of wrongs, guess what that did?
That's good.
It just
I like that.
undid all of the accusations against us.
Mm.
So I'm like, I'm free. I can do what I want to do. But guess what? Having the freedom I have now, I don't want to do anything shitty, because I also know I'm going to have a life review and I'm going to experience everything I did to others. So am I going to take advantage of that? No, I feel like maybe in some small way I've evolved far enough. So if you give me freedom, I won't abuse it. I don't want to abuse it. freedom to me is being able to do what you want to do without fear of judgment or being thrown in hell. I've discarded all that crap. It's not real.
What do you think
know?
about that, Sonny? It kind of goes along with what you're saying, and I found this to be true pretty much. I really believe this from Asen. I really believe that you go how your character is. Are you a nice person? You go peacefully. Are you a nasty person? You go not that peacefully.
Makes
Kind of
sense.
seen that, like you die
Yeah.
how you lived. You
Yeah,
know?
kind of true. Yeah, if you treat other people well, you know. And I think too, we do that projection thing. Like I think a lot of people, however you are and how you see your own characters, you project it on other people. So if you live in fear or whatever, if you're a kind of an evil person, you expect to be treated the way you would treat others. So if you're abusive to other people, you expect that's what you've got ahead of you. You're afraid of punishment or something. Whereas if you're a good person and you're at peace, I think you have less to fear because you project that on God. Like you see God as you kind of see your own self in some ways.
Mhm. I just gotta read this. Nancy Alley is one of my friends and mods. She chimed in with a dad joke. What do a tick and the Eiffel Tower have in common? They're both parasites.
That's a great dad joke.
Anyway,
think about that.
Let's segue into that clip here
Yeah.
about regarding judgment, right?
Mm.
So we can go back to this. Maybe back it up a couple seconds. Here, maybe.
That when they experience things through other people's eyes that they had done, they suddenly understand that we're all part of the same thing.
There's the one mind right there.
Exactly.
So when these people go through the life review, is there any judgment? Is there any self-judgment? Is there an angel guide? What's going on in these life reviews?
Yeah. Well, most of them say that there is no judgment by an other being, no God, no angel judging them, but they sort of judge themselves, not in the sense of saying that they've sinned. They don't talk about sin, but they talk about having to experience the pain they cause other people in their life review and realizing what they could have done better than they did the first time. And when they come back, they're kind of determined to do things better the next time.
So people that have even, like this might be talking about reincarnation, but even if you don't believe in reincarnation, if you believe in these near-death experiences, there are people that experienced those and then came back from that experience, probably had a new lease on life, and was like I think of the movies about Scrooge, like the Christmas Carol, or It's a Wonderful Life, things like that, when they get to see things from other people's eyes and how they've affected people's lives, whether good or bad.
That's sort of almost
and
like
then
that's what it's
changed.
based on.
Yeah,
I love those redemption movies, like when things
Yeah.
turn around and people go through a transformative experience like that. That's kind of almost like true, It's really
Yeah,
cool.
when we left the cult, well, even before we left the cult, but when I don't have that book to flash around, when I was a child abuser, and in some senses, since I was, and when we realized we had the freedom and the wherewithal to say, hey, no, we're not going to do this to our children, right? I remember what it was like to be have a corporal punishment, and I thought about how my kids must feel, and I did not want them fearing me. And the thing that just broke my heart was when Austin told me, like, Mom, I used to be scared of you, and that's not what I want for a
No.
relationship with my children,
No.
and that's why I have cried and apologized so many times and asked for forgiveness. And because I don't want to have that experience, that relationship with my kids where it's like I'm, fear and domination. That's not a relationship.
Yeah, that's evil. That's a whole fear-based mindset. Like you're afraid your kids are going to turn out evil or be bad or this or that. So it's more about control. Like that's another thing that even from a national standpoint or whatever governing standpoint is the idea of being all about policing and enforcement and surveillance. These are all fear-based things. And a trusting, like we don't know that because our society is such a mixture. But when love rules and enough people are enlightened so that you can actually live in love, there's no need for security cameras. There's no need for keys and locks and passwords. I think of all the inefficiency of all this crap that's required, and like the snitch culture in Scientology or most cults, it's all based on fear and control. Control is sort of a result of fear, and then you get obsessed. Like to me, Scientology is such a huge illustration of it because there's such terrible emphasis on recording everything and coming down on everybody about every last little tiny
Ethics
little
handlings,
thing.
yeah.
It's just insanity. And then the
Knowledge
RPF
reports.
and all this crap. I'm like, this is the opposite. This is basically hell on earth. Cults like that are hell on earth because there's no trust. Like you think of good relationships, like the way I look at it, I value the good people in my life. I
Maria
really
says paradise and hell are right here on earth.
They are. They are. People don't really, like, I actually believe that, like, people have said this is a learning planet. I totally buy that because we're here to learn. And we come here and we're, for whatever reason, we are disconnected.
Okay, let me ask you this: who's we? What is we? Is it your soul? Is it your spirit? What is we?
Like as individuals? Like,
yeah.
I mean, I guess the way I see it, like each individual person, we're here in a body, we're here temporarily to learn. So we are basically a soul and a spirit or a consciousness. And one weird thing is the idea that we can both be individuals, which we are. I mean, here's a quote that I love, and I feel like I understand this now. Jesus actually said at one point, "You are gods," and he was quoting, I don't know if it was a psalm or whatever, something in the Old Testament, and basically saying, "Well, you are gods." And there's a lot of people that actually testify that Jesus is on the other side, and when they go there, they see Jesus and angels and people that have lived in the past. And the idea being, a lot of them will say, "Well, Jesus was an ascended master. He didn't come here just to die and release people from this idea they're going to hell." That's considered a conspiracy theory, if you want to call it that. The idea that we're all sentenced to death. Our loving Creator sentenced us to a default death if we don't hear and respond to the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. Like, if you convince people, well, you're born in sin. I mean, and here's another inconsistency that I have problems with. I think it was Jeremiah somewhere, because I used to study the Bible diligently, but when I was in our church cult,
stacks of books like that.
Bible commentaries,
lexicons,
yeah. So, I mean, I remember having these inconsistencies, and I just had to park them. People say, "Oh, you have to take it on faith." Well, I don't know. I'm not really satisfied with that. I mean, I like to understand things. So I think it was Jeremiah that said, why should the children's teeth be set on edge because of the deeds of their fathers, or something like that. So to me, that was like, it's not fair to be held responsible for the actions of others. But then you have the Adam and Eve story. What is that? The exact thing.
I know.
One guy sinned.
Fruit.
Yeah, one guy sinned, and now everybody sinned, and now you are condemned to eternity in hell because of what one of your ancestors did. Is that justice? Is that fairness? I don't think so. If Jeremiah was consistent with the truth of God, then we have a problem. You know what I mean? We have a major inconsistency here, and it never seemed right to me. And now somehow you're always groveling and asking for mercy from God for your sins. And I've been there, because I bought into that when I was younger. And we're all sinners if you want to define sin. Now I understand that we're not going to be judged. We're here to learn. We're going to screw up, even if we're trying not to screw up. And if we do screw up deliberately, who's going to save us out of that? Well, it's like I felt such a massive sense of release and relief from the idea, well, you know what? We basically are going to judge ourselves. And what we choose to do on this earth, in the end, we create our own heaven or hell. And there's, a lot of people come back and talk about like manifestation, like you can manifest things and you have more power than you think you do. And the idea that we're all gods, the way I interpret that is like Jesus was referred to as an ascended master. He's somebody that's just further ahead on the same path. And when he said we're all gods, it's like, well, we're all gods in training. We're not all matured yet. We're not all where we want to go yet. Some will abuse their powers. Others will use freedom to do something good with their powers. So that's why, in a way, I feel like I got a lot of living to do and not a very long time to do it in, because I finally got it down. I finally have enough understanding to feel like I'm free to actually live life the way it should be lived. And I spent most of my life living in fear. And I think kids do. You grow up And I feel bad for people. I was privileged. Let's face it. I grew up in a fairly normal middle class family that was fairly affluent. So I mean, there were still problems, granted, but it wasn't like people I hear horror stories every day about people that live in Down Street, even North Adams, that are totally caught up in drugs. They're destroying their bodies. They're destroying their minds. They have basically little or no reason to even live. And I'm like, holy
North Adams
shit.
is like the armpit of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
We live right. we
Yeah,
live
so
right
we're
over
right
the line.
above North Adams. I mean, there's worse places, you know.
It's like one of the top 10. It's definitely in the top 10 worst cities in Massachusetts. Just saying.
Yeah, and it's sad. I feel
Yeah.
bad for these people, but I mean, I don't even know how I got on this particular.
I don't know,
tangent,
honey.
so
Let
I'll
me
just
just
step
read a
away
couple
from
things.
that.
This.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
this?
Just kind of soundbite this. This is interesting though. Vanessa, if you look into inventions from the 19th and 20th centuries, there were multiple people who suddenly quote and then invented the same thing, i.e. telephone, electricity, another argument for a universal consciousness. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, I totally buy in because I feel like, in a sense, there are people that come back and they testify to the fact that suddenly they knew everything. They felt like they had access to everything. And like I was saying, they'd see someone walk down the street and they know their whole life story instantly. And I'm like, wow, that seems like it would violate privacy a little bit. Maybe it does. But without judgment, that's another thing. Like when you're over there, the whole judgment idea that we have doesn't really exist. Like real love just sort of like accepts people as they are. And it doesn't involve all this judgment stuff, but the universal consciousness thing ties in because in a sense, people have gone as far to say is we are all connected. We're all part of God. We're all manifestations of God. And then I heard another guy, and he actually made a good case for this, is that we in some sense are all manifestations of like we're all parts of the same whole. So it helped me to look, even neighbors, even people with different political views for me, I began to feel like, well, maybe I should actually try to put myself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? They may be driven by fear or by some other thing, but there's people are all mixtures. Like I know people, neighbors of mine that are very staunch religious people that are loving people that are doing their best to raise their kids well. They're great people. They have integrity. I know they would stick up for me in a pinch. They're good people. And yet I think, yeah, okay, they're ignorant in some areas. They might be deceived in other areas. Also, I probably am too. I don't know everything, but
yeah, no, that's a good point because I know who you're talking about, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's this fear of like all of a sudden, missing out on having some, your kids enjoying the same things that you've been able to enjoy or whatever. And then that's where the extremes come in. And in our town, our little town of 700 people, it's pretty much split down the middle.
Oh, it is. Yeah,
politically.
terrifically.
And it's getting, I think the people in power right now are more to the right. And
Yeah.
it can be a little scary because, we had like a big thing about masks and stuff during COVID. There was like a lot of people coming in not wearing masks, and it was just, and there were people that died in town. This is a very old town, like elderly people. So it was an issue. And there's a lot of other issues that are going on in the school, that little tiny school. It's very controversial, but I know a lot of these people that I don't necessarily agree with. They're a little bit extreme in some ways, but yeah, they would give you the shirt off their back, but they also are very, can be very aggressive too. And I think it is governed by fear, and it's also governed by religion, extreme religion. And it again, you have this kind of paradigm because they're loving people. Yeah, they're walking around with guns and they'll shoot you if you fuck up. So yeah, it's a little bit
they're zealous,
yeah,
and they have integrity of a form. Like integrity to me doesn't necessarily mean that you know everything or that you even.
I hope they never see this.
Yeah, hopefully not. Well, whatever, maybe they're doing something from it. But I feel like, yeah, they're a good, well-meaning, well-intentioned, brave. Like they can have a lot of great characteristics. They're brave. They're willing to take risks. They're willing to get out there and put their life on the line for you, but they're deceived. So it's like deceived people are the most dangerous to me because they're full of zeal and they're full of vim and vigor and fire and all this stuff. But if they're on the wrong track, they're going to go out there and fight for a cause that might be wrong. I'm like, but then I look at them and I feel like all this study and everything has kind of helped me come to a point where I can look at them and say, you know what? I really like this person. I think they're deceived, and people used to always use that expression there, but for the grace of God, go I. Well, I tend to I changed that a little bit.
Yeah, I flinched when you said deceived because you're always like, you're deceived.
Well, because that was a
Marilyn.
Marlene term.
Yeah,
But I
it was a
think, I
Marlene
don't
thing.
know. The word
Yeah.
describes the situation.
So we should probably maybe do some more questions
Sure,
before we.
sure, yeah,
Sorry, I
don't
don't mean
wanna-
to interrupt you, but we got a lot of things,
Yeah,
and
no,
we're already at an hour and 14 minutes. So
okay. Yeah.
okay, all right. We got Kate Delight. Hey, Kate. Comment: Duncan should listen to or read the lyrics of "Daydream" by Lily.
Hmm.
So we'll have to check that out after. Kate Delay again. I always thought that the Bible in theological context is not bad. It's the man woman who interprets it in a self-serving way that turns it into fear and bad. Yeah. Yeah, because the Bible can pretty much be interpreted any way
Yeah,
you want.
it depends what you focus on.
Yeah.
Like there's, you know,
Mhm.
because I used to, we used to be had it drummed into our heads. No, the Bible's 100% right, and if there's any question, you're the one that's wrong.
Yeah,
yet-
and there are things like what Laurie said. Laurie Plays. She said in her experience, she didn't really interpret the Bible as it's saying that it's really hard to get to heaven. We were always told there were two verses that were always, drilled into my head about narrow is the way to heaven, wide is the way to destruction, and like it's like going, if you have anything on earth, like Marlene would be like, she was very materialistic, but we couldn't be, and it was like, oh yeah, it's harder for a rich man to get to heaven, or anybody in that case, that has anything, than a camel to go through an eye of a needle, which is like it's impossible. So you can't have anything on this earth is basically what she was saying.
You know what?
Although she had a whole closet full of nice clothes.
Yeah. Well, here's the way I got out of that whole thing is when I realized there's no judgment and there's no need to fear hell, and it seems like people have built up such a good case using the Bible and other other writings or whatever, that it seems like, there's no escape from that. If you don't toe the mark and you don't perfect yourself, you're going to hell. But when these people have come back from the other side, said, no, that's all false. Jesus is love. There's nothing to fear. Fear is a construct that's, not necessarily from the devil. It's just like fear produces anxiety and stress. And the Bible even says somewhere is like fear is like fear of punishment. It's like people are afraid of being punished and judged and all this stuff. And that's so inhibiting and keeps a person in fear. And to me, that was just like it paralyzes you. I consider fear and anxiety like they paralyze you, they cause depression, they prevent you from being effective, and then you go tiptoeing around afraid of being thrown in hell, afraid of being judged, afraid of being rejected. And I remember going through this series of, like, even when we were involved in our cult church and they were involved in other churches, there was this phase where there were all this sort of like deliverance ministries and people casting out demons and trying to cure you of rejection and all this. And I'm like, oh, little one, you got rejection. You're living in fear. The whole thing is based on fear.
Right.
They're trying to control you through
God
fear.
rejected you from birth.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. You were rejected from birth, and now you have to be walking in fear and intimidation your whole life. Fuck that.
Yeah, and Marlene would be preaching this, and she'd go around rejecting people, be like, "You're deceived. You have a demon of Jezebel."
Yeah, you'd be getting dragged, like called into these little secretive meetings where you were going to be. How did they term that? You're basically going before the tribunal. And you're going to be, and it's just very intimidating. You're afraid. I remember we'd sit under these 2 or 3 hour sermons, and later all you wanted to do is just die or just go to sleep and never wake up. It was just
this used to be our bedroom when the kids were little.
Terrible.
before you did the addition, and that right in front of us. I wasn't the same bed, but I remember us just laying there and looking at the ceiling and just being like, "Oh my God, we're going to hell," and we felt like crap.
It's depressing.
Like if you leave church feeling like shit, that's probably not
something's
church
wrong.
For you.
Yeah, I began to realize something's horribly wrong. It's just bringing on depression. And we're clinically depressed and miserable.
Yeah,
it take days to recover from those sermons. They weren't uplifting.
Not
Make
at
you feel
all.
better. You felt like you needed to go to see your shrink.
Yeah, and everybody else would just be eating. Like Duncan and I, because we're empaths, we were like, plus we were always the ones that were like the whipping, the punching bags. So like our kids and us were the punching bags, and they were all kind of related. So they're all like just eating their cake and stuff. And like, everything's wonderful. I'm like, are you kidding me? We just heard a 3-hour sermon about how disgusting,
the Old
horrible
Testament.
we are.
Or another thing that was a common theme was we were the Israelites wandering in the desert for another 400 years, wandering in the wilderness, and we were never going to make it into the promised land. and we're going to die in the wilderness. It's the kind of optimism that we were living under. It
Yeah.
was pitiful. There was always some reason why our hearts weren't right, and we had to do another 40-year stint
Hearts
in the
aren't
desert.
right. Yeah.
you
Get
know?
your heart right.
It's like,
I want to read this from Kimberly in Japan. This is a good story. I had a very rough relationship with my mother. I was always called a burden to her. I lost her to cancer, and during her last breath, I got the courage to ask her, was I a good daughter? She was unconscious, but she wildly opened her eyes for the last time when I asked her that. I can never forget that moment. I don't really know what religion is, but it gives me a lot of healing. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
wow.
So she acknowledged that you were, you
That's
know,
very cool.
I love that.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Irish Smart, are you there? I'm a firm believer that the vast majority of people are good, kind folks. At least that's the world I choose to live in. Yeah, that amazed me when we left the cult and we were like,
Oh yeah, the world that they were warning us
the worldly
about.
people were totally horrible and they're all going to hell in a handbasket and they're on the dung heap. And then I met people and they were like really nice.
Way nicer than the people we go to church with.
Totally. Asen, we are all humans. Humans are messy. It is how we act after our mistakes that makes us good or bad humans. Do you regret it? Did you apologize? That is the most important thing. I like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely true. Yeah. I'll read one more. Asen, if people ask me, how do you know what is good or bad when you don't believe in God? That's a good question. I always say, if you need a God to determine what is good or bad, you're not really a good person.
Kind of true.
Mic drop.
We're given the capacity to understand these things if we're open to it, you know?
Yeah. So what do you think? We read a lot of there's more book suggestions for you. I have 2 Dr. Michael Newton's books. Fascinating stuff. I especially appreciated he was a total skeptic until his body of evidence grew to the thousands. Well,
Yeah, and that's
that
the
out.
good thing is like this research goes back
What?
pretty far. Say what?
There's no pizza in heaven.
Are you kidding me? Oh,
that's like saying there's no
That's
Santa
a
Claus.
drag.
All right. Well,
I'll
this was
challenge that one.
great. I'm glad we did this.
Yeah.
What do you
This has
think,
been
guys?
Interesting.
Yeah, we had kind of a little cozy, small group, but I like it.
Yeah. No, sometimes that's better.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, some
no
people are
spice
still
today.
scared off by this subject because I realized when I first started studying this, I felt like an alien. Like, like people are going to think I'm kind of wacko. Like I'm
me.
going
No,
off the deep end. Like, well, this is a pretty good deep end to go off of. It's done a lot for me to make me happier and,
Yeah.
less anxious.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll talk to you
Yep.
soon. We'll end here. Bye.
Yeah.
Xenu, Marlene, everybody partake. Cheers. This is good coffee. This is why, my hubby makes the coffee.